Welcome to the Go Big With Gib podcast, a place for professionals, business owners, and entrepreneurs to talk about their big wins. So Erik, how are you today?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's really good to have you on. I really appreciate you jumping on with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Start out, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. Where did it all begin?
Yeah, it basically began when I was a young kid, and my dad he was an entrepreneur. His dad was an entrepreneur, and they always had, my grandfather was a Polish immigrant after the war, World War II. And so they grind it. My dad was working in his dad's junkyard when he was 8. And so my dad started, when I was born, he was just really getting started, but he had a lot of confidence that he was going to be successful. And he was so concerned I'd be a spoiled rich kid when he was successful that he went the opposite. And he was just always pushing me to make money. And it started with doing math problems in the car, but instead of 1 + 1 or 5 + 5, it was what's a quarter plus a dime plus a nickel, and doing mental math. And then it came to him teaching me to want to collect money so that I could afford the next highest dollar bill. So how could I save for $1, then $5 and $10, 20, 50, 100, and grow into having these bigger dollar bills. So that gave me sort of this intrinsic fascination with how to grow the dollar. And then from there, I wanted to make money, so I remember the first real go out and make money thing I did was I went around our house with a trash bag, grabbing all the stuff I thought my mom and dad didn't need, and then went door to door in our neighborhood trying to sell it to our neighbors. So old golf balls and random things around the house, and then did the lemonade stand thing and sold flowers as well. Realized I wasn't making money fast enough, and then I started buying and selling Beanie Babies when I was about 8, and that was the first real hit. Where I made it, my point, the reason I did that was I went to my dad when I was 8 and said, I want an electric guitar. And my dad, in his eloquence, said, great, get a fucking job. And the thing is, if you hear an adult say that to an 8-year-old, there might be a lot of judgment. But as an 8-year-old, you don't know any different. You're oh, okay, I got to get a job. So I didn't take it as an attack. I took it as, okay. So I went and tried to figure out how to make money. And so buying and selling Beanie Babies, I was able to buy the guitar that I wanted. I bought a BMX. I saved some money for a car. I made a few $1,000s as an 8-year-old doing that. And so that was the start, and kept going from there.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because I have 3 small children, and my daughter did a lemonade stand this summer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's inflation or what it is, but she actually made $150 at the lemonade stand in 2 hours.
So, see, that was the funny thing. I made $14 in a week. And I'm older now, I guess. I'm 36, but it wasn't a lot of money when I was, what was that? Yes, 8 years old. It's $14. The guitar I wanted was $150. And I was I'm not doing, at 8, you're not spending 2.5 months committed to doing something and making $14 a week. So I was this isn't going to work. But that's awesome. These days I think you can get away with it. And honestly, who knows? I probably priced it way too cheap at the time.
Yes, so moving forward in your entrepreneurial journey, What came about next? I know you had a couple of different ventures before you got, into the marketing arena. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, to try to make what could be a much longer story short. Actually, I would say in 8th grade, one of the what I still consider a pivotal moment for me. A friend's dad came into our school and said, hey, I'm going to take these kids half day on, I think it was Wednesdays, we're going to take them to a local business every week for 8 weeks and introduce them to the owner and talk about how they started this business. And so an 8th grader, I was, 13, I went to the local bank, the local health food store, in different, actually lynda.com, which became LinkedIn Learning, started in my hometown of Ojai, California, but 7,500 person town, there's no one there. But I went to lynda.com when it was 9 employees. And it sold for a few $1 billion, I think. So it was going to all these things, and it really I always use the word I took entrepreneurship for granted, and not in the sense of people using it in a colloquial way, but the literal way. I just thought that's what you did. I met all these people that had their own businesses. My dad did it. His friends did it. These people around me that I admired did it. So I guess that's what I'm going to do. And I always saw myself as a business owner from a young age. And so in every job I took from then on out was just how to learn. And so I worked in that health food store we toured. It's the main health food store in Ojai called Rainbow Bridge. I worked there for a year. And that was actually a really interesting lesson because I learned a few things. One, I loved working with people. Like my favorite part was working the cash register or working the deli or working places where I got to communicate and talk to people. I loved that part. I hated being in the back. Number two, I was told that I'd get a raise within 6 months. And I think it was 8 months in, I was training someone. And I somehow their salary comes up because let's be real, it always does. And I found out that I was training someone making 25% more than I was. And I was like, that seems odd. So I went to the general manager and said, hey, what's going on here? And he said, it turned out, long story short, my manager was taking credit for all my work and saying I was doing nothing and reporting back as if I was doing nothing. And I saw myself like, he can't take my word for it. Like, what am I going to do? Fight my manager? Like, he's going to have to trust him. So I quit after 8 months. But I also was like, I hate working for people. Like, I want my work I want the results of my work to dictate my outcome, not someone's opinion of me. So entrepreneurship came back into the fold. And then I worked in my dad's real estate office. And then in college, my dad had really become successful at this point. So my freshman year, I actually went to work for my dad in his real estate office as well. And that was the year I confirmed, which I knew already, I was the oldest. My dad was always hyper concerned I'd just grow up to be a spoiled rich kid. So that confirmed that there was no way, because I had no desire to be that. I wanted to crush it my own way. I wanted to make my own path. And I knew that I could not work with my dad or for my dad. I was like, that's it. That ship has sailed. Thankfully, learned that at 18 and I was done. So then I went, okay, well, I know I want to go build my own thing. But again, back to the people I admire, I had all these business owners I knew, and everyone I met, there was this commonality they all kept saying, which is sales is the most important part of owning a business. You're going to sell in everything in your life, whether it's selling yourself for a job, selling the product your company makes, being in sales, like you need to know sales. So I tried to, that summer after my sophomore year of college, I tried to get a job as a used car salesman because that was like the epitome of what everybody hated in sales, and I wanted the challenge. I wanted to go figure out, like, people always talk about used car salesmen and hating them, and it's this funny thing. And I was like, all right, well, I want to be that guy. And not because I want to be it long term, but I want the challenge. I'm here to learn. I'm not here for a career. And so I went to do it. No car dealership would hire me because I wouldn't lie to them and say I was dropping out of college. So they're like, you're going back in 3 months? Yeah, we're not hiring you for a 3-month stint to be a car salesman. So that didn't work. But then I got this little letter in the mail to come sell kitchen knives door to door, Cutco, and most people know. And I was lucky enough to jump into it, and just like, I was there to learn. And I was like, I became the archetype of what they hoped to run into. I was social, and I wanted to learn sales, and I was going to eat up everything they taught me and do exactly what they said and follow everything to the T. I wasn't there to like try to, because a lot of people go into Cutco and go, the first week they make you sell to your friends and family as a training ground. And that weeds out like half of them because people go, I'm not selling to my friends and family, and they're gone. And so people start calling it a scam and all these things. And it turns out it's actually one of the best sales training grounds, period, on the planet. And I've hired many people out of Cutco because of that, including my business partner now came from Cutco as well. And so, yeah, so I ended up doing door-to-door knife sales and did that and ended up crushing all their records and like just finding that I had a knack for sales. And the next summer I was supposed to open their office in San Luis Obispo, like Central California. And a friend of mine called me and had come up with this business plan that California had passed a lot of filter storm drains. And if you didn't filter your storm drains, it was a $75,000 per drain fine. And he was like, there's a huge opportunity here. I designed a drain or a filter. We can install it. I need a sales and marketing partner. You seem to be good at that stuff. You want to come in? So I became his 50-50 partner and launched that business with him over the summer of my junior year. And during that summer, we signed our first contract. I did all our legal because I was a 19-year-old kid that figured out, like, I literally copied an alarm company contract for filtering because it was a service contract and made that and priced it out and did everything. We signed our first contract. And then I was about to drop out of school and I was like, you know what? I don't want to filter storm drains the rest of my life. Like, he was really passionate. He was a surfer. He was sick of like rashes all over him when he'd come out of the water in California. Like, it was like a thing. And I was like, I'm not that passionate about this. So I literally walked away from the business. He grew it to be a multi-million-dollar business. And I graduated, went into real estate 1 week before Lehman Brothers collapsed in September of 2008. And spent the year doing that and made $350, started scrambling. I got a call from the guy who taught that 8th grade class to us about entrepreneurship, and he said, "I've been admiring your hustle from afar." His son and I were in a band together in high school. His son has kept pursuing music, and he said, "I really want to find a way to help artists like this harness that entrepreneurial spirit and make money doing what they're doing. Do you have any ideas?" I went, "I'm going to put it all together." Spent 2 months building a business plan, came back to him, showed everything to him. He said, "I love this. This is great. I'll get back to you." I go back to real estate. 4 months go by. I get a call 4 months later, thought it was done. And he goes, "All right, I raised us $1 million. You're running it. You get 5% of the company. Let's go."
Wow.
Okay.
And this is the drummer in your high school band, right?
His dad.
It's his dad. It's his dad. Yeah. Okay.
Who, by the way, I knew nothing about at the time. And it turns out he was one of the co-founders of Pay-Per-View. He was on the board of Men's Warehouse. He had another nonprofit with Deepak Chopra, like well-connected guy. So that was who was in my corner. And he basically gave me minimum wage, which was a lot better than $350 a year, and said, "That's all you get paid, but you can turn this into whatever you turn it into." And I was able to get it profitable. And after a couple of years, I realized it was never going to be that big of a business. Basically, it was like masterclass about the music industry for musicians. So it was like teaching people how the music industry works and how to make money, and giving them but a little more one-on-one coaching, not just content, but like really working with artists. And I just realized independent artists as a customer is kind of a hamster wheel. And it was just never going to be, as I put it when I was 24 years old, this will never send my kids to college. I just had my first kid, so I was a little, predating what I needed to be worried about at the time, but I was thinking long term. And I was like, this isn't going to be what sets me up. And so I left and I started a company called Swag of the Month with my next door neighbor who had a background in t-shirts. And I had figured out, like, why don't we send people a t-shirt every month that like fits their style and just do a subscription for t-shirts? Because like what guy wants to shop? That was the thesis. And we'll just like pick out and curate t-shirts for people. This is pre-Dollar Shave Club, pre-subscription e-commerce. We launched this thing and it just took off because like the Wall Street Journal called it an innovative business model, and we were in the cover of TechCrunch, and we were in all these men's publications, and press really built that business, which doesn't work anymore, to be clear. But after a year and a half, we were able to sell it to a holding company. And then I was I was actually asked to work as head of biz dev at Live Nation, head of e-commerce at Warner Music, or to come to Science, the incubator that no one had heard of, but they had just launched this cool brand called Dollar Shave Club. And I decided to go with the startup against my parents' advice and a lot of friends' advice. I was like, I like this thing. The main reason I always like to admit is because it's just how simple major life choices, because I'd probably be in the music industry right now if it wasn't for that one little decision that was made because I like Santa Monica and I lived in Santa Monica, and Live Nation was in Hollywood, and Warner Music was in Burbank, and Science was in Santa Monica. And I was like, I don't want to commute. Like, this sounds better. They all offered the same salary. So I was like, the salary is the same. I'm staying in Santa Monica, and startups are more fun. So I stayed there, but Dollar Shave Club took off. I got to advise there and advise for the rest of their portfolio, helped them launch an activewear brand that a year later we sold to Bally Total Fitness. And that's when I spun out, started advising and consulting for a lot of brands, because now I'd built and sold to e-commerce companies and had a good reputation in the space, and started trying to help companies do the same. But when I'd go to hire agencies, they'd all drop the ball. I realized that 99% of agencies are horrible at what they do. And so I decided to hire my own little SWAT team. And that was the birth of Hawk Media, and then grew from there.
So you basically founded and sold Fame Wizard was the name of the other company,
Fame Wizard
right?
I didn't sell. Fame Wizard, I hired a CEO to take my place after 2 years. And then after 3 more years, he shut that down and joined me to build Hawk Media.
Okay. Now, who is that that you're referring to?
Tony Del Mercado.
Okay, and he's your COO at Hawk?
His title's president now. He was my COO traditionally, and now it's president.
Okay, great. So you guys were together back then on that past entrepreneurial endeavor, and then formed Hawk together as co-founders.
Yep.
So when was it that you started Hawk Media?
Well, it depends. There's a few start dates. We celebrate January 13th of 2014 is really the day it became Hawk Media. I got the name in July of 2013 when I was just consulting, but it wasn't a business. That was just me not wanting to call it Huberman Consulting and have people write a check to something. I had in my head, I never thought I was going to be building something, but I had in my head that in case it turns into something, I should leave the opportunity open. So I should call it, I should brand it in some way that if it does grow, it can. I didn't think it would, to be clear. but I thought I was actually working on a tea company at the same time as I was starting Hawk. And my thought was, I'm going to hire a few people. We're going to build some other brands to cash flow it. And as soon as the tea company takes off, I'm going to pivot all these people into that company and focus on my own brand. And then about 3 months into both, I was like, yeah, this marketing agency thing is way more fun and seems way more solid. I'm going to stick with it.
What did Hawk look like in the very first initial days of Hawk? I mean, how many people did you have? Where were you based out of?
It was basically a room like this one I'm sitting in right now, but with 7-8 people. It was 200 square feet. It was so few funny stories. One, so I started consulting about 3 months and I hired an assistant I had no office. So she just I worked on site at one client 3 days a week, and then I'd work from either an incubator in LA that I ended up investing in called Amplify. I worked there a couple days a week sometimes, or I'd work out of a Starbucks next to my apartment. I was just kind of roaming, working with clients. And then I went to build a team and got my first office. And my first office, again, 200 feet. I remember I toured this building. I was trying to share an office with a PR firm that was, a few people too. And we were looking at 1,000 square feet together. And I was like, yeah, this could be great. I'll take that. You take that. We can share this. This could be good. And they were just dragging their feet. And it's like, when I'm ready to do something, let's do it. What are we waiting for? And so I went and toured myself. If you have anything else? And they showed me this 200-foot little cubby, and the window faced the wall of the neighbor next door, and it was about that far away. So it's window, wall. So there was nothing on. It's not just nothing out the window. It might as well not be there. And I was laughing. I told my stepdad, who I always loved shooting the shit with because he was an entrepreneur as well. And I'm like, yeah, it's fun, but there's no view. There's a window that just faces this wall. And he goes, are you working or looking out the fucking window? I'm like, fair enough. So we signed the lease on that spot and took it on. And from there we started growing. I mean, it was immediate. I went back, I basically hired an initial 7 people. It was a Facebook marketer, an email marketer, a web designer, a fractional CMO, which was Tony originally, etc. And then went back to these companies I was already working with and said, hey, a la carte, month to month, we'll just jump in on what you need when you need it. Now I can do all these things that you trust me to do. And thankfully, we had a good team right away, and we just went. And it just took off from there. And then I needed 2 email marketers, 2 Facebook marketers, and just started hiring more and more people. Then we needed a manager for some of the people, and learned, on the go. And I always found it way better to be reactive than proactive on this stuff, and let's, oh, we need something, hire it. Not, I think we're going to go here, so let's start building it now. That's when we made our biggest mistakes versus, literally listening to what the business is telling us and hiring when we need to, growing as we need to.
So you brought up an interesting point. Tell me, how was it that you came about the formula of having all of your services being a la carte and then doing the month-to-month contracts? Because I've talked to a lot of different marketing agencies over the years, and a lot of the marketing agencies want to lock you into a long-term contract, and they want you to buy a big package. You can't just come in and get, help with, paid advertising or SEO or whatever the product is. How did you, it sounds like you did that from inception. Yeah. What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, it was thankfully I had the experience on the brand side. Let's take long-term contracts first. It's I don't want to marry you before I've ever dated you. And to put it in bluntly, I don't, if
right.
I'm sitting here hiring you because I want you to do what we're talking about. If you do what you say you're going to do, then there's only one other reason that I'm not going to want to continue to work with you, which is I'm broke. And if that happens, I'm not paying you anyways. So why are we signing a long-term contract? The only thing I could see that glazing over is that you're not going to deliver what you say you're going to. And so I was just so when I started my own, I was we deliver. So now I've realized the issue on that works if I'm the client, meaning if I'm talking to someone, I'm a pretty rational guy. I don't just tell people to screw off when they're doing exactly what I asked them to do. Now being on the service side, you realize that's a little more challenging because there's a lot of irrational people out there that have a bad day and just fire things. So, I understand where people are coming from on the longer term agreements, plus building your business that way, et cetera. But especially in the beginning, to prove our worth and put our money where our mouth was, that seemed like the right thing to do. And over time, we became credible. And now there's a lot of people that come. We still will offer month to month, but a lot of people sign longer term contracts for discounts with us because it allows us to have, again, predictable revenue, longer term relationships, build things for a longer term outcome, not just be what have you done for me lately, which, in marketing can work in some cases, but not others. Now, the a la carte side, hasn't changed. Because to me, I think the companies that have trouble doing that have trouble building a business model is a problem. So they're just throwing everything at it and trying to charge for everything. And for us, we just made sure that we had the right margins on everything, and we were very disciplined on how we pay and how we charge. And it works in a lot of cases. Now, that being said, we're very consultative in how that a la carte approach happens. So we're not just like, whatever you want, tell us, we'll just do it. Like, that's a really bad approach, because a lot of times people will think they need advertising and they have no funnel, so they're not going to convert anything. Those kind of things where it's like we try to tell them which way they need to go, but base it around their dollars so that we can move things around and work that way. So from a cultural standpoint and an infrastructure standpoint, we can be flexible with where the money's going, but from how we engage, we like to be consultative in that way.
Yeah, I've always had a problem with the long-term contracts, because it seems like if a marketing agency performs, then why would you fire them, right? Like if they're doing what they're supposed to do and they're giving you a good return on investment, why would you let them go? And so you would think so. And the sad truth is, majority of the time that is how it works, which is great. But there is a sector of people that don't work rationally. So you would think so, but what ends up happening is we have a really good month, and then they go, like, this happens. This happens all the time, actually. We think we should take it in-house. There is not a single Fortune 2000 company that doesn't work with agencies, but for some reason, growth stage companies think that there's this like weird rumor that's existed for the past 15 years in the venture community that at some stage you bring all your marketing in-house, even though no solid, long-standing business has ever done that. All these growth stage companies do, and 50% of the time they end up throwing their company into a tailspin because they screw up all their marketing, trying to do it themselves, pulling people off the street. But they still do it. And so it's not very common, but it happens pretty regularly at our scale now, that someone's like, you guys have been amazing, we're going to try to do it ourselves now. It's like, are we too expensive? No. So you're literally, the whole saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? They'll be like, yeah. Well, you're doing that right now. You're fixing something that isn't broken, and by nature, you're probably going to break it. But that happens a lot. So I do see contracts, what I've noticed, in some instances, force a person to have a conversation and think a little more about it, versus like, oh, sorry, the decision's been made. That's the extent. Yeah, I guess it would also avoid that situation where a client just walks off without even giving you an explanation or allowing you to have that conversation. Because if they're under contract, then they've got to come to you and say, hey, look, I want to talk to you about some of the concerns that I've got.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So tell me, and I know this is a pretty broad general question, but how was it that you scaled a business that started with 7 people working in a very small 200 square foot space from what it was then to, I know, you read a lot of different stuff on the internet, but I think Hawk has over 250 employees at this time.
Somewhere around.
And it probably fluctuates and it's growing. But how was it that you were able to scale to such a big size and keep the momentum going in the way that you've done it? I mean, it's really, I know Hawk is one of the fastest growing media companies, marketing companies in the United States. And so you've really done something extraordinary here. And I'd like for our listeners to be able to hear, how you did it.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it, which is number one. Like, I've learned this lesson the easy way and the hard way, if I'm going to say it, is as the founder, you've got to drive. Your ambition's where you're going to end up. I just saw another conversation about this. If you want, wherever you want to hit, that's where you're going to hit. If you don't have ambition to get bigger, you're going to stop, because at the end of the day, and I have an incredible management team right now. Like, my leadership team are a great group of people. A lot of them have been with us a while now, like really solid, in lockstep. Things are getting done. This big boat moves very nimbly because of this leadership team, and it's been really great. And if I'm not pushing, it's not happening, because people want to be comfortable. And it's like, even as a founder, like, you just want to, like, once everything feels like it's in a good spot, you want to take a breath. You want to take a week off or whatever it is. But the moment you do that, you start slipping. And it's just the truth. And so I had great advice. We had a few internal problems like a year and a half ago, and we have a venture fund as well. One of the investors that I'm very open with, we talked about it. And he's like, if you think anyone is going to run your business for you, you're sadly mistaken. That is a old wives' tale amongst entrepreneurs. I'm going to hire a team to run it. And I even, after that conversation, I ran into a friend at a conference in July of last year, and he's like, yeah, we just hired a CEO. He's taken over everything. I'm going to go chill on my ranch. You know, I'm on the board now. It's awesome. And I was like, I didn't think that existed. I'm jealous. A year later, that guy embezzled all the money, drove the company into bankruptcy. The whole thing's done. Like, it's just not, it's very, 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 very hard to find someone who's going to be as passionate about this as you are. And by the way, if they're not, there's someone else out there more aggressive and more passionate than you are that's going to work, eat your lunch. And you just can't forget that. So that all being said, that mindset drives a lot, because then you don't rest on your laurels. It's almost, the mental health conversation, it's almost a bad mental health play, but it is what drives success, in the sense of every time we hit a new milestone or we hit a new success metric, I'd be like, great, how do we get to the next one? Like, there was almost no celebration. Now I try to force myself to celebrate the small wins, because it is motivating when you feel like you're winning over and over and over again, even on a small level. So I do think from again, a motivation standpoint, force yourself to celebrate all these wins and keep looking forward. What's next? How do you build? How do you get to the next level? And what is that next metric that you need to break? And how are you going to do it? And, you have to be pushing on all cylinders all the time, because every business, big and small, is organized chaos. Don't show me a CEO that would disagree. I'll show you a liar. It's there is no stability below the surface. And my wife works in private equity. I've bought 12 agencies at this point and looked at hundreds. We've bought a software company. We have our venture fund that's invested in, I think, 35 companies. I've angel invested in another 30, very involved, see a lot of different businesses. I have yet to see one that's just wow, this just works because it just is a machine. There's always the ghost in the machine, the people doing it, the people holding it together. And a lot of times what's baffling is it's a very few people holding together this giant machine a lot of the times. And as the founder, you've got to be that main person. And even when you think you've got people that are holding it together, you've got to be leaning right up against behind them, helping them and being in there with them, because the moment they see you take your foot off the gas, they will as well.
People talk about a work-life balance. You mentioned earlier it's not a really good mental health play.
Yeah.
Talk that through with me a little bit. What is your, how many hours are you working? Are you taking vacations, or are you just grinding all the time? I know you travel a lot for work because I follow you on social media, and I see that you're flying to different countries for different conferences and all over the U.S. But how do you handle, work-life balance and compartmentalizing things? I know you just had a wedding anniversary, I think 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no, that was it was my friend's our 5 years coming up, but it was our friend's 5 year. I just liked the picture and it popped up. So I was like, yeah, hey, happy anniversary to them. But I got a few congratulations on that. No, yeah, my 10-year dating anniversary is in February, and my 5-year wedding is in March.
Okay.
So,
okay, cool.
Yeah. So this is actually a fun story of how this came to be. A year into the business, we got offered a lot of money to sell it by a great buyer. And we were looking at it, in hindsight, it was, thankfully I didn't take it, but it took quite a few years to actually be worth what they were offering right then, because they wanted to acqui-hire us and bring us in and build out. And it actually could have been a great outcome that way either. But we decided we were just getting started and there was a lot of room to build this. And so my partner and I were like, well, if we don't take this now, then we're really committing to this being a marathon, not a sprint. And so this is, again, I was 28, he was 32. So it was okay, so if we're going to commit to this, no, that's not right. He was 31. But I was like, if I'm going to commit to this, what does that look like that we can make this a marathon? And we started talking about the idea of work-life harmony, not balance. Balance, it's that it's against each other. Harmony, how do you make this all work together? You mentioned travel. My number one goal at my late 20s and early 30s was, and still is pretty high up there, is to see the world. I was like, I want 2 or 3 epic trips a year, somewhere crazy. I want to go see the world. And what we talked about is, what would you do if you sold? What would you do if you were retired right now? It's I'd travel. Well, how much do you really need to travel? I was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 cool trips a year for a week sounds great. So God forbid I take 2-3 weeks off a year to go somewhere, not at the same time, to go somewhere crazy. And he was like, well, I want to play golf every other Wednesday morning. I was like, sounds good. That was before he had 3 kids and before I had 1. But that was the initial part of like that culture of like, we can work really hard here. But there's a few things I've learned in the meantime from some really smart people. One is a guy named Bob Glazer, who started Acceleration Partners, another agency, non-competitive, really good guy. He told me that he would pay his employees to take 1 week off a year. He would actually pay them, but you're not allowed to answer your phone or your email. And then you get the prize money. It was like $500 or something extra. And it was like, why? Well, if I force everybody to have to take a week off, that means I have no single point of failure in my company. And so I was like, similar idea, if I can't take a week off, what happens when I get sick? What happens if something else, a life event happens? The whole company collapses if I take time off? Well, that's not sustainable. So taking time off makes the whole thing function better, frankly. So that was always important. And then the other advice or recent anecdote I heard is one of the founders of Basecamp, the software company, they never worked more than 40 hours a week. Ever. And they were like, no, we're going to grow this business 40 hours a week and then stop. And he's a big car racer. He's raced Le Mans a bunch of times. And I just had him on my podcast. And the guy is awesome. And they've built this incredible software company because it turns out, like, this is what you learn is if your business takes you grinding that extra hour or 2 every fucking day or whatever it is, you're not building a sustainable, scalable model. Because like now at this size business, like, if I have to do that for this business to sustain, the whole thing will collapse because I will get sick either because of that kind of work level or just naturally, and then we're going to lose a ton of momentum. So instead, I was constantly trying to replace myself and make it so that I am obsolete. Now, it's not always achieved, and there's times when I'm way more critical of the business than I want to be, but I'm always, always, always trying to replace myself, make myself less important so that I'm not. And frankly, and I've been in that pocket for most of the business. When things turned, like when I was talking about the headwinds we hit last year, then it was all hands on deck. I worked harder than I've ever worked to get this thing back together because again, now it's a big thing that it's not me just working really hard. It took a lot. But generally, I've run this business with a sense of like, I'm additive. I'm growing the business. I'm building it. But if, God forbid, I'm out for a week or 2, like it's really not that big a deal.
How did it feel going backwards, sort of, where you had to jump in, and really grind like that during that time period a year and a half ago? I guess you've become accustomed to doing things a certain way, and it sounds like you really had to roll your sleeves up and,
Yep.
and get your hands dirty.
Yep.
What was that experience like?
Horrible, actually.
Yeah, I bet.
It was expectations versus reality misalignment, where I thought I had a leadership team I could count on, and everything was like going exactly how I thought it was supposed to go, and it like there was this veil pulled over that I can't get too into, that there were a lot of things that weren't working the way I thought they were, and I had to clean house, like go down to the studs from an infrastructure standpoint and build it back up. And I will say, I spent 8 years growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and I can work nonstop with that. Like I'm not a morning person. I was up early every morning, right into it, worked long days, took vacations, enjoyed a balanced lifestyle. But like when I'm here, I'm working, and I'm working every day of the weekend. Like there's not a day I don't work, but there was never, I loved it. So it was never off. Last year, I did not want anything to do with it. But that was where it was the opposite. Whereas like the rest of my career, I was really not needed, but I was adding to it. So everything I put into it, I saw returns on. Because if I spent another hour or another day on something, it was all adding to the business. I spent last year, this wasn't the actual reality, but the mental game of it felt like I was working my ass off to save the business, not build the business. And we weren't ever in dire straits, so I need to always validate that. But that was the like emotional feeling of it, was like, if I don't do this, this thing will fall apart, because I had been blindsided so much. So, mentally it took a lot to work through that. Thankfully did, and feel way better. And there's, a lot of lessons and a lot of benefit to going through something like that, because now, you feel like you take over the world. It's like, that's what a bad situation looks like, and look how we came out of it. That same advisor I mentioned looked at me and said, because I was very open with him what was going on, he's like, most companies that go through this, they're dead within 12 months. I'm like, really? It's like, yep, there's a good chance you're going to be dead within 12 months, or you're going to figure it out. Good luck. But thankfully we did great, not just fine, we did great. We really got through it and fixed everything, and now the business is better than it's ever been. So knowing that we have that ability goes a long way. But yeah, no, it was this 6-month period that was, 9-month period that was just like the worst I've ever experienced.
Wow. Talk to me about the role of advisors and mentors in your businesses. Have you always had an advisor or a mentor, and is that person somebody that is paid, or is it? I know when you were young, your dad was a mentor, and I think you mentioned your grandfather was a mentor. But
really I didn't know my grandfather that well, but I just knew that he was an entrepreneur. But yeah, no, my dad for sure, more than I realized until he passed away, which was like 2.5 years ago. So like he was more of my mentor than I ever thought he was. So people used to ask me, do you have a mentor? And I would say most of the time, no. What I have are a ton of very smart people around me that I can call with specific things. So for example, now I'm trying to figure out sort of the next phase of the agency. We're actually changing the brand. We're doing a lot of work that we turned 10 in January, and I want to really like show up as the welcome to the new Hawk Media. And this is who we are, what we stand for, what we've created over the past 10 years versus what we sought out to create 10 years ago, which is we've used the same brand for a year or 10 years. So with that, I'm now calling a lot of friends that have built and sold agencies and have built these massive agencies or are still running massive agencies that are steps ahead of me going, what's your secret? What do you do? And that's how I've always looked at mentorship, is I want to go ask the best in that realm what they're doing. That's where I learn. I'm not a big reader, even though I wrote a book. I'm not the biggest, I'm not a voracious reader. I don't actually listen to a lot of podcasts, so I record probably 10 a week. But I talk to a lot of people. I'm really social. I love just getting into asking questions. I learn really quickly when people talk to me. It's literally how I learned in high school. Thankfully, my 2 best friends would go read the material and then tell me about it. Like actually. So I barely read in high school. And so that's how I've always learned. And so instead of like a single mentor, I still try to keep a ton of people around me that are really good at specific things that I can call. And I'm always there to be helpful the other way, but I can just be like, how do you do this? What do you think about this? And then just things like, I don't know if you're familiar with YPO, Young Presidents Organization, huge advocate for them, because I have this group of 7 CEOs that we meet once a month and basically talk hyper confidentially about our personal, professional, and family life for 4 hours once a month, and just lay it all out there. And then if you're going through something, you've got a group of people, whether it's that one period or we all call each other offline as well, to just be like, hey, I need a sounding board. So I have a lot of those too. And I have absolutely toyed with the idea of an advisory board. I haven't put one together yet, but there is a point where that will come, that I want to put together a board of just rock star people to help me build this to where I'm trying to take it.
So you mentioned YPO. Is that a mastermind group?
I think it's like the original mastermind group. So to explain YPO, Young Presidents Organization, they've got 30,000 members worldwide. To join, you have to have a minimum of 13 million in revenue and 50 employees or a $2.5 million payroll. So the idea is you're running what they'd consider a real business. The average revenue of a company in YPO is 70 million, to give an idea. So everybody you run into, you can assume they're around that 70 million range in revenue, but there's 30,000 of them around the world. So, and then it goes into kind of 3 tiers. There's the forum, which is that group CEO therapy thing that we talked about. And then there's chapter, which there's literally 11 chapters in Los Angeles. My chapter is Santa Monica. There's 100 members in Santa Monica. And that meets, and we do an event 9 months a year. So there's 8 like afternoon or evening events. We just did a pickleball tournament, and then in a couple months they rented out Universal Studios Harry Potter World for Halloween. So we're going to do, it's really cool stuff because they got this group of connected people. And then we also do one trip a year, which I actually am hosting and put together the trip for this year, which we're all going to Cabo San Lucas next week for 3 days together. So all 100 people. And then you have international, which is, there's, again, 30,000 people around the world. And in the US, it's a lot of heads of businesses. In the rest of the world, it's like heads of the country. Like there's literally presidents and top richest people in many countries in YPO. So as someone, as you mentioned, that travels, I can go to anywhere in the world, hit up a bunch of people and say, hey, I'm coming to Japan. Who should I meet? And I ended up hanging out with the president of Sega. Just for fun, like never met him before. I just went out and hung out with them. Went to Korea, and Korea, the biggest industry there is steel, aside from Samsung. And so met up with like 3 of the biggest families in steel and went out partying all night just to like you get taken care of in all these places and meet people. So like from a professional life, you get a sounding board and almost your board of directors to talk to and check in with every month. You get a network of people that you can, when you, like I opened up business in China and ended up, I asked, there's a literally doing business in China, like forum as part of YPO. I had messaged a bunch of people and said, hey, I'm trying to learn, can you teach me? Had like 10 or 12 consecutive phone calls about what to think through and how to do this. Was able to like actually compare different responses to understand exactly how I needed to enter China. Was like, those are things that like nothing else provides that. And it's not that expensive compared to a lot of the masterminds I've heard about, but obviously you have to hit a certain level to be in. But I did that. I joined 6 years ago. It's been one of the more valuable professional things I've done.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like an amazing opportunity to get some good feedback from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the structure of Hawk currently. I mean, after COVID, I know a lot of people went to working remotely.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're headquartered in Santa Monica. How many people do you have in the brick and mortar establishment versus, I mean, I don't need a number, but I'm just asking percentage wise, are most people remote or most people on site?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we were 90% LA. And we had a few remote people that were great workers that moved away, and we wanted to keep them. But vast majority were here. And then COVID hit. After 3 months, we said, we're fully remote. Go wherever you want. We won't hold you back. Do whatever you want to do. Did that for 3 years. And it worked really well for 2. And then we realized it worked really well when the company was made up mostly of people that had trained and learned in the office and then gone remote. Worked great. As we started to try to onboard new people, it was really difficult for them and us. We had only to this day, we've only onboarded one top seller on our sales team out of, I mean, you're talking, there's 20 people there now, but there's probably been 60 we've cycled through or more. And we haven't been able to onboard good sellers remotely at all. And so I finally, in May, went, I'm done. Like, we need to start working this back. And we're in 43 states right now. We have people all over the country. We have people in Canada, Philippines, China, UK, and all over the US. And so, including Alaska. And so I went, we got to start rolling this back. But originally, I thought about it for about a year, because a year is when we really start, like, again, frankly, when we hit those headwinds, I started rethinking how we were doing things. And it was like, I don't know if this remote thing works, but how the hell am I ever going to bring people back? I can't just like, all right, move to California. Like, that's not going to work. And then I started looking at our stats, and it was our meeting, I think we had an exec meeting at some point, and our head of HR said, our average tenure of an employee is like 2.2 years now, which, just to be clear, Google's 1.4. So I feel very good about that, even though I want to keep improving it. But the average employee is 2 years and change. I was like, oh, yeah, it's great. So half of our employees are gone after 2.5 years, basically, is what that means. So if I start working in office now, in 2 years, half our employees will be in office, give or take, just using round numbers. So 2.5, really good. So I'm like, and if we grow, it's even more than that. So I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna open an office. Going forward, we're hiring everyone in office. Anyone that's close to the office should come in. And if you're on sales or marketing and you're in LA, you're coming into the office, because we really need to build that camaraderie again. And let's start that. So in June, I leased an office. July, I started saying part-time. August, I played a little more with part-time, and then I found the irony was the best performers were all showing up, and the underperformers weren't. So I was like, all right, we're done. 100% in the office if you're within driving range of the office, and welcome back. And that started September 1, and I've seen the effects drastically and quickly.
So you feel like you have a lot better quality control bringing people back into the office physically?
Yeah, it's less quality control and it's more better training. It's the osmosis thing that people talk about. It is true. It's the little hearing one of our sellers that was new saying stuff on the phone and going, whoa, 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 don't ever say that again. What are you doing? You don't get, it's that simple. It's such a nuance, but yeah, if he's remote, he's doing that at his house, saying that shit all day, and I don't know until the end of the month where I'm like, why are your numbers bad? I don't know, I told him everything you told me to do. Unless I start listening to all his calls, which now you're doubling up on time versus just a quick lap around the office. It's just not as efficient as I hoped remote. Now, our employees have obviously asked, any employee that's performing, again, we have employees all over. None of them are at risk. We're not firing anyone because they're not in office. But if they don't perform, we're replacing bad performers with people in office. So if you've if we're lucky enough to have hired someone remote and they continue to perform, and there's some people in mind that are great. We have a whole team in Baltimore that's not in office that they all crush it. I don't need to worry about them, and I never will. One of them's the biggest revenue driver at the company on an individual basis. He's not going anywhere, and he's not required to move to California. But there's other people that as we see underperformers, we're going to replace them with people in office.
I got you. So let's talk a little bit about your book. I would love to talk about the Hawk method. I listened to the audio version of your book over the last couple of days, and talk to me a little bit about the 3 principles that you've adopted at Hawk in terms of how to properly market a business.
So basically, this came from me doing this for years, then getting asked a lot of questions on how this all works, and getting asked to speak, and really came up with this framework that was, as my favorite 1-star review on the first day said, it's basically modern marketing 101. He started with, I don't get it. It's basically modern marketing 101. I was like, no, you got it. That's exactly what it is. I wish I screenshotted it. I think he heard me on a podcast talking about it and deleted it. But so the 3 principles of marketing are awareness, nurturing, and trust. Awareness is what most people think of as marketing. Is how do you get your name out there? Advertising, word of mouth, a lot of times press. Just what are the ways you let people know you exist to continue to flow in the funnel? And then there's nurturing, which is what do you do from the time they find out you exist to the time they purchase, and then post-purchase to keep them coming back and buying more. That's probably the one most people miss. And I'll talk to all 3 of these more. But then the last piece, trust, which is really in the beginning, third-party validation. How do you show that you're trustworthy? Well, in the beginning, when nobody knows who you are, it's getting other people that have trust to talk about you. It's PR, it's testimonials, it's reviews, it's influencer marketing, those kind of things. And over time, it becomes consistency and brand building and all those kind of things. So those 3. And so what we do is we look at that as a framework is to identify quickly what is a company missing and where do we need to double down on. And again, so awareness, it's identifying which channels should they be advertising on, how should they be getting the word out there. And the thing to think about with an awareness, and I see this a lot, people will be only nurturing, and let's talk about this as a tripod. If you kick one of the legs out, the whole thing collapses. So if you're missing awareness, that means you're just nurturing your existing book, your existing audience, and you're built a lot of trust with them. So they're purchasing, but people move, they change jobs, they lose their job, they die, they do all sorts of things that cause them to no longer be your customer.
I think you said they get bored in the book. Sometimes they just get bored and switch to a different provider.
Yep. So you're going to lose customers over time. You're going to. It's par for the course. So you have to be filling that funnel. That's awareness. In a simple word, that's what that is. And then nurturing, the reason nurturing is important is you can create all this awareness, but the average person doesn't make a purchase, and even an impulse buy takes 3 weeks to 3 months from all the data we have. And so if you know it's going to take weeks to months and you're just hitting them once with an advertisement, they're going to forget about you. And so you're going to end up with a small portion of people based on who you're hitting that actually convert to become customers. So from a financial standpoint, you're going to spend a lot of money reaching a lot of people and only convert a small portion of them. So when you add nurturing, which is not as expensive as at scale, you complement it with a little bit more effort, and you end up converting literally usually 3 times the amount of people if you keep in touch with them. So it's a massive shift in terms of how that works. So that's why nurturing is important. Now, trust, there was a study Edelman did that 75% of people won't buy from a company they don't inherently trust. So early on, again, if you're just advertising to me, building awareness with me, and then nurturing it yourself by saying, we're great, we're great, we're great, we're great, here's our top sellers, we're great, I promise we're great, and no one else is validating that, there's no trust, you're not going to convert that many people. So it's getting that third party in there, super important. Until you're Red Bull, Coca-Cola, Nike, McDonald's, then you've got your brand, and it is what it is.
So you said that a lot of people miss the nurturing part, that can be the most, I think you said it could be the most misunderstood and overlooked part of the 3 tripod prongs. How important is an email campaign? I know that you mentioned in the book, I think you said that you're a millennial and that somebody had told you that email, like that millennials weren't even doing email anymore. And you went on to say that that wasn't true for you, that you use email all the time. How important is it to capture the data and and send an email campaign to your existing customer base? Because to be honest with you, that's something that I am not currently doing. Telling on myself a little bit here, but it's something that we want to do. And I mean, it seems like it's really low cost to keep reaching out to those folks.
For a digital business, I've easily seen people triple their revenue by just adding an email campaign. Because again, people just forget. It's that simple. This is not complicated stuff. People forget about you. You show them an ad, then you leave them alone, and they go, "Oh, I forgot. I moved on." That's it. And so just staying in front of them and having a contact form over time can really, really grow your business. Email marketing, I think the main point in that is I heard the anecdotes that millennials don't use email anymore. And then it was Gen Z don't use emails anymore. You know what it is?
Yeah.
High school students don't really use email. Once they're in the working world, they all use email. Everyone. So trust me, we have a lot of Gen Zers too. You get on email. So what we see from a statistical standpoint, email marketing is just as effective as it was 15 years ago and 10 years ago. It hasn't changed. It hasn't gotten better, but it hasn't gotten worse. And it's always been an effective marketing tool. So keep going with it. And email is super effective. So I'm curious, using you as the example, if you're not using email, what are you doing to nurture leads? What are you doing when people come in and get in touch with you? What are you doing to stay in touch with them?
That's a great question. To be honest, we really haven't done anything. And the reason for that is because we weren't trying to scale. In the past, we were not looking to scale. We were kind of happy. I have a law firm. There's 5 attorneys in the law firm, and we had all the business that we could handle. And so the thought process was that we're charging, we're increasing our rates periodically. A lot of our work is hourly. And so we would increase rates periodically, and that would run off a lot of people, but we still had more work than we could handle. Now that we're looking to really scale the business and add more attorneys, more office locations. Now we've got, 3 office locations. We want to do everything that we haven't been doing. So it's time to fill in the gaps with those things.
And what I'd say, and obviously the best time is now, what do they say? The best time was yesterday. The second best time is now. In terms of this, it's kind of like why I called this Hawk Media. I didn't know I was going to build a big business. I was just using this as my actual plan was to, again, start the tea company, use the cash flow from this to help build it. And even if not that, run a small agency, cash flow it, buy a piece of real estate a year with the cash flow. And in 10 years, maybe I'd have 10 buildings or something, and I'd have a little nest egg. That was how I was thinking about all this. And, did not think it would turn into what it did. But leaving the door open. So in your case, even if you didn't want to grow, so an email campaign for a law firm to me is you just staying in touch with all the leads that are coming in. So as you meet people, as you build a network, so what I do, and this has been sort of the secret sauce of part of how I built Hawk, I check in with everyone on my contact list every quarter. I make a template, I send it myself, so it's automatic, not automated, is how the distinction I've heard. So it's easy to do it at scale, but I am doing it. And I get responses from whatever percentage of people, and I'm just always staying in touch so that if they ever have a need, they always remember me. So I'm the guy in their mind. Now, do I have to take all the business that comes in? No. But is there a ton of business that does come in because of those check-ins? Absolutely. Every day.
Are you sending all the people on your contact list the same communication, or are you kind of compartmentalizing them into different categories?
Nope. Oh, same communication. Because for me, it's also a numbers thing. Listen, would it be better if it was a smaller finite group and I was much more customized? Probably. And do I check in regularly with friends in a different level and closer contacts? Absolutely. But no, frankly, most of the people on that list know what I'm doing. They've known me long enough, et cetera. They're very aware. And yet still, I've been told to fuck off probably twice or 3 times in 10 years, so I'll take it. That's fine. Most of the time, a lot of people ignore it. And that's fine. It's still a reminder of who I am and what I do and touch base and if they need something. But a lot of people use it as I'll get the, hey, Robot Eric, actually glad you emailed me. It's a reminder I needed to talk to you about something. So it's all, it just, even if people know it, it's not insulting. They're oh yeah, actually I need to talk to you. And so I get a lot, again, daily, many responses that start conversations that turn into something. Yeah.
No, that's powerful. That sounds like kind of a no-brainer because you spend all that money on advertising to build that funnel, and then if you're not having all those contact points with them, they're going to forget about you.
Exactly.
Erik, talk to me a little bit about like a typical week. Do you have any kind of, time management or productivity hacks that you like to use throughout the week that help you to manage your busy workload?
Yeah, it's not, I don't know if it's a hack, but it's what I do. So if I'm working, I'm working. So I schedule my calendar every 30 minutes from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and sometimes it's 7:30 to 7. And then I usually have some sort of evening thing half the week as well. So it is locked in on my calendar. It's like, I wake up, here's everything you have to do. Like, so I don't have to really overthink what I have to do. And if I need to get something done, and then just like anyone, I get canceled on, things shift. That's the time I use to catch up on emails. If I don't have enough time, I do it in the evening. Like if I, 2 hours at night after dinner, that kind of thing. That's when I'll, obviously I'm 1 year into having my first kid. So now I try to spend time with her until her bedtime at 7. Then I open the laptop back up, and my wife's in PE, so we both do, and try to get some work done before bed. And try to be a zero inbox guy. The last piece of this that's super important is I send myself emails as to-dos. So if I balance, all my to-dos are in my email and I'm trying to get my inbox to 0, but I can't check something off until I've done it, it forces me to just move through things and get them done. And it has caused, now I've been joking a lot, my job is traffic coordinator. Like most tasks, I'm like, who's supposed to do this? Because it's not me. If I'm supposed to do it, then I need to hire someone. Like my time's more valuable than anyone's. This is the mindset again, for scaling. I'm like, if I'm actually sitting here doing like mundane tasks, I don't have the right infrastructure. And there's a few things that doesn't apply to, vision of the company, things like that. But other than that, I should be able to hand it off. And so I work through my inbox, I do the things I need to do, I hand off what I need to do and get everything else moving and try to keep it at 0.
Throughout the day, are you doing meetings all day from, if you're working 7 to 7, is it just meeting after meeting after meeting?
Absolutely.
Wow. That sounds, and you said you work 7 days a week still.
Yeah, I'm not doing that much
to this day.
But on weekends it could be 2, 3, 4 hours, not 10.
A full day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm pretty good at enjoying my weekends. But that's the thing is like if you think about your weekend, how much time does a normal person go and turn on Netflix for 5 hours, or go and play video games, or sit on the couch? Like that time, I'll open up my laptop. Versus, but then I'm trying to think of like a good this weekend was a Jewish holiday, but like what did I do this weekend? I don't even remember. I know I took my daughter around a bunch of things, but oh, that's right. Yeah, we went out to dinner Friday night with the whole family, put my daughter to bed, watched a movie with my wife. Like Saturday, I know we did a bunch of stuff Saturday too, but I'm blanking on what it was. But like there was a lot of time for family too. You
talked about having your 10-year anniversary for Hulk that's coming up here in January. What talk to me a little bit about, what does the future of Hulk look like? I know you said that you were revamping some things. You've got the big 10-year anniversary coming up. You want to refocus your mission statement or your outlook on things. Talk to me about that.
We've realized that we've built a great business. We serve all size companies. I just did an industry analysis. We have 69 different major industries we've worked with at this point across, almost 5,000 brands. And so knowing that we have that kind of scale, the pitch of outsourced CMO did us really well when we were getting going. We were outsourced CMO, month to month, a la carte. We can manage one service, your entire marketing suite or anything in between. It's our commercial, it's what we did. And it really hit home with small and medium businesses. We were also at an age where I feel like entrepreneurship was the sexy thing to do and everyone was starting an e-com brand or some sort of new business. That really has subsided, the past few years. Like last year, this year, that has gone. And what has also happened is I've realized that our pitch does not resonate with larger brands. We've worked with a lot of larger brands. We worked with Unilever, Estee Lauder, Nike, Red Bull, Verizon, HP. But like the outsourced CMO is not why they hired us. They hired us because someone recommended us and heard that we're really good at marketing. So it's like, okay, we want to still be this business that can serve sort of the little guy and the challenger brand, but we also want the opportunity to work with some of these bigger guys more and show that we really are the best at what we do. We just got rated by Digital Marketing News, the top performance marketing agency in the country. So it's like, we want to be able to flex that. We have this AI system that we built that we launched pre-ChatGPT to basically digest 8,000 companies' marketing, media, and revenue data in real time across all industries so that we can actually articulate what's happening in real time across every platform in every KPI and benchmark an individual company against it, and then use AI to actually teach how to optimize a business and actually do part of what we do, like automate a lot of what we do as a strategy team. And so we've built AI around it. We've got our venture fund, but we've invested in some of the top marketing software companies out there. Like we were one of the investors in Klaviyo that IPO'd last week. So like we've really built this infrastructure, but we don't talk about it. Our pitch is still, we're your outsourced CMO, and it just falls short. So we've already developed a lot of how we're going about this, but the idea is to talk about we're AI enabled and explain that. We're innovation focused, and how we have this partnership and this deep partnership with the technology side of marketing. So it's not just about pulling levers and creating pretty pictures. And then we've got 10 years experience and 5,000 brands and a profit focus and a top performing agency. Like all that together creates the story that of what we've really built versus what we set out to build. And that's what we are talking about. And then just simply turning my hat around, we're cutting this part off and we're just calling it a talk. So drop in the media, because I do see it, we're a marketing company, not necessarily a media business. We don't own media properties. So it was a great name when I was sitting in my bed on GoDaddy 10 years ago, but now we think Hawk on its own is probably a better way to talk about the business.
Awesome. Well, Erik, look, I really appreciate you coming on with us today. It's been great to catch up with you. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Go Big with Gib. If you haven't already, go follow us on social media at Gib Irons. We'll see you next time.